When you're low energy, right? When you're tired, does that show up for you as being a little bit more temperamental, a little bit less patient, a little bit less kind, a little bit less emotionally regulated, all those kind of things? If that's the case, then energy is the key to problems that come up in our life with our partners. Do it for energy so that you have the energy to show up better across all those things.
Testosterone levels in men have plummeted over the past few decades, so much so that the average 45-year-old now has the hormones his father had at 65. And yet most doctors still treat hormone dysfunction with quick fixes that only address symptoms and leave the root cause untouched. My guest today is Chas Gessner, founder and CEO of Vitality RX, a men's health telemedicine platform redefining how we approach hormone health. A Brown University alum, two-sport Division I All-American, and Super Bowl champion with the New England Patriots, Chas hit his own hormonal crash at just 30, even with access to elite performance resources. In our conversation, we dig into why standard testosterone replacement therapy fails most men, the overlooked difference between total and free testosterone, and the hidden role of stress, sleep, and environmental toxins. Chas also shares the science behind his Reboot Program, which jumpstarts your body's natural testosterone production instead of shutting it down. You'll walk away with practical strategies to improve sleep, metabolism, and biomarkers so you can reclaim your energy, focus, and long-term vitality without sacrificing your health. So without any further ado, on with the show. Chas, it's so great to have you on the show.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, so we know each other from a mastermind. We could talk a little bit about that, but yeah, we've known each other for probably over a decade now, right?
Yeah. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun, huh? Yeah. 10 years. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So why don't we start with your superhero story, your hero's journey? Like you had pretty illustrious past and a very exciting future ahead of you. So why don't you take us on that journey?
Yeah, well, I took a fairly non-traditional path out of the Ivy League. Ended up bouncing around in the NFL for about 7 or 8 years. So that was a journey in and of itself. Learned a lot of lessons. Learned not to have too many high highs or low lows, and kind of roll with the punches. I was always kind of a fringe guy, so I was always bouncing back and forth between practice squad and active roster, and I would get injured and I would get cut and I would go somewhere else, and a lot of bouncing around. Lived in a lot of different places, and then after I got done with football, I got into the healthcare sector. Worked for a couple of big industry titans like Stryker and Olympus, doing medical sales. So got a kind of a front row seat from the executive C-suite of hospitals to operating rooms to private practices. And right around that time, I was kind of going through a lot of the health issues that men tend to go through later in life, maybe later in their 40s. And I was kind of in my late 20s, early 30s and going through a lot of stuff. The biggest probably reason was a lot of wear and tear on the body, a lot of head trauma, things like that just come with just hard charging for a really long time and all the stress that's included in that. And then, all the physical component of it. And so, with my background in kind of performance optimization, I started searching for answers outside of kind of the traditional healthcare system of just, something's broken, let's put a Band-Aid on it. It's, more digging into kind of what's at the root of the issue. Started doing a bunch of different labs, reconnected with an old friend of mine from Brown, actually, who had become a naturopathic doctor. And once we popped the hood and really looked at what was going on, there was a lot of stuff awry. So I set about kind of finding the best way to fix a lot of those issues. And that was kind of where my current company, Vitality RX, was born.
Yeah. And how long has Vitality RX been around for?
It's been about 7 years, maybe coming up on 8 years. We've gone through a couple of different iterations. The first iteration of the company was a concierge medical clinic. So we built a network of nurse practitioners in the Southern California area, so LA, OC, San Diego, to do in-home exams and blood draws and IVs and a lot of that kind of stuff. concierge style. And then COVID hit, and that made things fairly interesting in terms of the at home component. And then just kind of as the different types of diagnostics have evolved and as telemedicine has evolved, we've kind of slowly moved to just a completely virtual platform and kind of pivoted into um, our current iteration, which is integrative hormone health for men via telemedicine.
Right. So COVID was a big disruption for your business, but ultimately perhaps a blessing in disguise, or silver lining there, since you were able to pivot to a virtual model, which is more scalable for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think people started to become a lot more accepting of that model right around that time. It was already on the rise a little bit, but it really exploded. And then even in terms of the regulations and things like that, it opened a lot of stuff up as far as accessibility.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are some of the tests and the dials that you want to turn to optimize your performance and your health, especially for men, as we have, societally been seeing dropping testosterone levels in men and so forth. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that we're getting subjected to, endocrine disruptors, microplastics, all sorts of nasty stuff, and it just seems to be getting worse and worse.
Yeah, it really is. I think the anecdote is that a 45-year-old man today has the same testosterone levels as their dad did when he was 65. So a pretty precipitous drop over the last 50 years or so, just kind of, all the trappings of modern life, right? Like all the stress, poor sleep, the nutrient depletion in the food, the hormones and chemicals in the food, like you said, all the different endocrine disruptors and personal care products. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so we're kind of under constant bombardment there. And hormones are really kind of the foundation of health and longevity for everyone, right? It's often overlooked because testosterone gets thrown around a lot, and there's a negative connotation sometimes with testosterone, or maybe just a misunderstanding of its function. In men, it's the master regulator of the endocrine system. By no means is it the only important hormone, but it is a very important hormone. But as far as testing, what's often overlooked are the interplay. What's often overlooked is the interplay between testosterone and estrogen, for instance, or another hormone called luteinizing hormone, which in effect is the signal from your brain to the testes that says, hey, produce testosterone and sperm. There's a sex hormone binding globulin, which binds to testosterone and then determines how much circulating testosterone or free testosterone you have in your body. So that's often overlooked and misunderstood. So those are some really key biomarkers that are really important to focus on and at least check in on from time to time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that so one of my past guests is actually my doctor, Dr. Hotchner. He's phenomenal, based here in Miami, where I'm currently shooting this video. And one of the things that he explained is that the accepted range, the normal range as determined by whoever, but reported on the lab reports, is nonsense. It's really lousy. And so if you consider yourself in that normal range, you could be really off the mark in terms of what would be considered healthy.
Right. It's fairly meaningless. And unfortunately, there's a lot of docs and clinics that don't understand that and just kind of go off the ranges. I think the acceptable range, and this is for all age groups. So any guy that goes in age 25 to 80, the range is 280 to 1200 or something like that. Right. And if you're off the range on the bottom or the top, that's when they say, okay, let's, do an intervention. But if you're anywhere inside that range, you're fine, and that's just total testosterone, right? Like it's not even the most important marker of testosterone, which is free testosterone. And it doesn't take into account the bio-individuality of people and, the other hormones that are at play either.
Yeah. So explain for our listener the difference between total testosterone and free testosterone.
So total testosterone is important because it's the amount of testosterone that your body's producing. Free testosterone is the amount that's not bound by sex hormone binding globulin and albumin in the body. So it's actually your free circulating testosterone that's able to be used. So that's a pretty important distinction. So there's the range of total testosterone. I said 280 to 1200. Free testosterone, I'm not even sure what the acceptable range is. Typically, we find that guys start having symptoms when it's anywhere below around 12 nanograms per deciliter.
Okay. And what are some of the typical symptoms that you like, whoever the listener is, if it's a guy, would be experiencing?
Yeah, a lot of guys tend to think it's only has something to do with sexual function, which that is a part of it, but the bigger symptoms are energy, mood, emotional regulation, focus, weight gain, like all the things that you would kind of typically say if your buddy asked you how you're feeling and you just said, "Oh man, I feel like I'm getting older," right? Like all the things that you would associate with that those are the symptoms of hormone dysfunction.
Right. And that's kind of like that boiled frog syndrome where the frog doesn't realize that the water's getting hotter till it's too late. So how do you get on top of this in a way that is more proactive than just waiting for that water to finally boil?
Right. With women, they have menopause, right? And that kind of hits them and it's fairly sudden. I mean, they have perimenopause prior and that there's kind of a little bit of a transition period. But with men, it's something that slowly happens just naturally without all the things we mentioned that are working against you. Just naturally, your testosterone falls by about 2 to 3% a year. Right. And so, like, if you actually do the math on that every decade, that's 10 to 15% decrease in testosterone from 40 to 50 or from 30 to 40. Right. So, from 30 to 50, that's 20 to 30% decline in testosterone. And that's all of those other confounding variables taken out of the equation. So it does happen fairly slowly and it does affect different people differently. The culture, the kind of hustle culture rewards, grittiness and just kind of you suffering in silence almost for men. And so it does happen fairly slowly and it goes unchecked. So really, it's just a matter of, we said the ranges are so big, everybody's so different. Really what you're checking for are trends over time. So with that being said, it's always just important to get at least a baseline for where you're at, which is just a snapshot in time that you can compare yourself to yourself at a later date.
Right. So that entails a blood test.
Right. Right. That entails a blood test, which you can go to a LabCorp request or a doctor. You have to be careful about them giving you a complete panel, right? And them kind of being knowledgeable on the nuances of hormones. We use an at-home test kit. There's been some really cool advances in remote diagnostics. Small blood volume collection. There's a device that we use that looks like this, and it's called a Tasso device. And you essentially just stick this on your shoulder and click this button, and it pokes a little hole in the skin, and then a little bit of capillary blood drips into this tube. You peel it off your shoulder and throw it in the box, and then it gets sent to our lab for processing. So from that, we can actually get a full panel of those labs that I was talking about.
Right. Cool. And actually, your test kit is how much? And you're offering our listeners, viewers, a discount.
Yeah, the test kit and telemedicine consult. So you'll use the test kit, you'll send it in, you'll get the labs, and then included in that is you'll hop on a telemed consult and talk to an actual men's health expert practitioner and discuss your results and kind of chart a path forward. So that's typically $149. So we'll offer a $20 off coupon code GYO20 to your audience. So they can just go to the website, vitalityrx.com, click get started, and it'll take you through the process.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That's generous of you. Yeah. So I love this supposedly Peter Drucker quote, but I think it was misattributed, and it's what gets measured gets managed. I'm sure our listeners who have listened for a while have heard me say that quote before. But in the case of health, and in this specific instance of men's health, I think this is critically important because if you're not measuring, you don't know if you're making any real improvements by making lifestyle changes or taking various supplements and so forth. And a lot of supplements have extra junk in them that you don't really want. And so, yeah, tell us a bit more about how just kind of educate our listener a bit more on this.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I use that saying all the time too, because people tend to, not only are we all looking for some kind of a silver bullet, but people tend to just kind of spray the board. And it's just not a very good way to figure out not only if something's working, because the likelihood that you're only doing one thing different is very low. There's just too many other variables. But how do you know if you ever needed it in the first place? Right. And so you can kind of apply that principle to most things. So we like to talk about that a lot. That's why we have that diagnostic component, and that's very important. As far as supplements, it's a little trickier. There's only a couple accurate ways to test certain micronutrients. I think we kind of operate on the assumption that based on the standard American diet, most Americans are deficient in things like vitamin D, things like omegas, things like zinc, magnesium, these really kind of important foundational vitamins and minerals and antioxidants that can only help. They can't hurt. And you kind of mentioned the other issue, though, is purity and potency. You got these proprietary blends that are out there. You don't know exactly what's in it or how much of each thing. There's the things like the AG1 where there's 15,000 different ingredients and you don't know how much of each one of them is, and it's likely just a little dusting of each, maybe not enough to make an impact. You could make the argument that it's better than nothing. But yeah, with our supplementation, we like to be on the top end of the range in terms of purity and therapeutic potency. I think it's really important, and there's not a lot of brands out there that kind of meet that standard.
All right. And so, did you formulate your own blends and sell those on your site?
Yeah, we have a product that is essentially daily vitamin packs. I think I have mine. Yeah, so each day, this comes in a package of 30. There's a box that's kind of a roll, and I tear off my vitamins for the day. We stay away from blends, but this pack, will have, ADEK, boron, CoQ10, B complex, NR, which is a precursor to glutathione, omega-3, and zinc, right? And so these are all single ingredient, high purity, high potency vitamins. So they're already separated into daily packs for you, which is very different from the experience of opening up all those different bottles of vitamins or meal prepping them for yourself. It just makes it a lot easier to stay consistent, to travel with them, all that kind of stuff. So that's always part of our program. Even the hormone reboot program, that's an important component of it that's often overlooked. But we do have some packs for specific use cases that we sell separately.
Do you customize this? So if I have really high zinc levels, I'm guessing I'm not getting zinc supplementation in my packet.
Yeah, we don't have a diagnostic that can test micronutrients yet. I think eventually we will. Zinc is one of those things that's we're not dosing it high enough to where if you have fairly normal or high zinc levels, 20 milligrams of zinc a day is going to make too much of a difference. And there's a very, very high likelihood that nobody really has too high of any of these levels, these kind of foundational vitamins and minerals.
Hmm. Gotcha. And so you said this is part of a program. What else are the component? What other components are there to getting your hormone levels up to optimal?
Yeah, so we have a prescription component of our program, and that's why we call it an integrative approach. It's a combination of holistic and conventional medicine, but the prescription component, we've compounded a capsule that has enclomiphene, which is a prescription compound that essentially stimulates the brain to produce more luteinizing hormone, which is the signal to the testes to produce testosterone. So that's kind of the main foundational backbone of the compound is enclomiphene. We dose it a little differently than most other practitioners, but I can kind of get into that later. We put DHEA in the compound. DHEA is a building block for hormones. 7-keto DHEA is another way to get a little bit more DHEA in the system, but that's not androgenic. And then a very low dose of progesterone, which kind of helps with the balance of testosterone and estrogen, helps improve sleep quality a little bit. So those are the main ingredients. So even that compound, right? We're combining some prescriptions with some over-the-counter supplements to create a really integrative compound that, with a lot of those things, work very well together synergistically.
Right. And what happens if a guy has high estrogen levels from, let's say, eating a lot of soy products? How do you address that? Is that part of the program too?
Yeah, we see it a lot, actually. Not necessarily high, sometimes low. Estrogen's a bit of we call it kind of a Goldilocks hormone. There's a sweet spot there. You don't want it too high, you don't want it too low. And interestingly enough, if it's too high or too low, you start getting a lot of the same symptoms as low testosterone. Um, Typically, it's accompanied by either too high testosterone or too low testosterone also. So one thing you can do, if someone has really high estrogen, it typically and low testosterone, it typically means that their body's aromatizing, which means converting too much testosterone into estrogen. And that's typically an issue of too much body fat. Like body fat is where the body aromatizes testosterone and estrogen. Some of these phytoestrogens, that kind of thing, has been a little bit overblown in terms of its impact. But it's definitely a factor, and it's only made worse by being overweight, essentially. So you can address that by raising testosterone levels, losing body weight, so improving metabolic function. If it gets too high and symptomatic for too long, you can use a very small amount of aromatase inhibitor, an estrogen blocker. We try to kind of stay away from that as much as possible. Estrogen's good. You definitely don't want to over suppress it, and you definitely don't want to suppress it if you don't have to.
Gotcha. Okay. And so is let's go deeper into what the different modalities are that are typical for somebody with low testosterone, like they get prescribed testosterone from a compounding pharmacy, or they get shots of testosterone, the replacement therapy. What are the different modalities that they're going to probably get recommended by a traditional allopathic doctor, and what is your caution for those folks who are getting that kind of advice?
Yeah, the traditional treatment for low testosterone is just kind of as a blanket policy is if someone has clinically low testosterone, we just prescribe them testosterone. So that's when you hear TRT or HRT, that's testosterone replacement therapy or hormone replacement therapy. That's essentially you're low in testosterone, so let's give you testosterone. That can be useful in certain circumstances, but it's greatly overprescribed and sometimes mismanaged. Um, when someone has what's called primary hypogonadism, that means the brain's sending the signal to the testes, but the testes just aren't working. They're not producing the testosterone. That's when TRT makes sense because the testes aren't going to produce it no matter what you do. That's 10% or less of the cases of hypogonadism. Much more likely is secondary or functional hypogonadism, which means the brain just isn't sending enough of the signal to the testes to produce testosterone. And that's where our solution makes a lot more sense.
Right. The stimulating the luteinizing
Right, exactly.
hormone, was it? Or
Yeah, LH. Yeah, luteinizing hormone.
yeah.
Yeah, stimulating LH then signals the testes to produce more testosterone. And then you're kind of working with your body's own natural mechanism, kind of stimulating a more natural process, essentially.
Right. And I would imagine that's more sustainable, more um, easier on the body.
Right, because it's almost kind of like the concept of a peptide, right? You're stimulating a response or a reaction in the body instead of just giving something that to someone that's lacking.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about peptides because you hear about that and kind of the biohacking circles and so forth, but it's I don't think adequately explained why this is a thing now and what are the benefits. Like, what did we do before peptides were available on Amazon? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And I'm by no means a peptide expert, but I do have kind of a tertiary understanding. Um, Peptides are essentially chains of amino acids. So your body has thousands and thousands of peptides circulating at any given time, and they all carry out different functions, right? Like they're proteins that carry out different functions. So
Yeah.
um,
Like for signaling.
for signaling, exactly. Like a really popular one is ipamorelin or ipamorelin plus CJC. That's a growth hormone secretagogue. So that helps signal to produce more growth hormone pulses. There's things like that. Like you said, there's plenty of evidence if you look for it. You could make arguments of about how strong it is. I think my take on peptides is a lot of people are treating them like kind of a silver bullet and using
Mhm.
them as a band-aid. And I think most of us are walking around at a 3 or 4 out of 10. And there's a lot more things that you need to do to build a strong foundation to get you to maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10 before peptides can maybe get you that last little bit of improvement. And I think if you're using peptides without addressing kind of some of those foundational components of health, then it's like you're building a house on sand.
And I think that some of these are can be maybe dangerous or maybe ill-advised. I know we ordered, for example, BPC 157, and I I don't know if we even finished the bottle, but I don't know. I read something, or maybe it was a video I watched. Like, this is a little bit dangerous. Like, you don't want to just be trying to be your own doctor on this stuff.
Exactly. I think that's unfortunately, and that kind of gives, it's like they say like this is why we can't have nice things, right? Like these are incredibly powerful compounds that when used properly under the right supervision by somebody that really understands the complex nuances can be super effective. But unfortunately we're all DIYing this stuff, and anything that you can buy on the internet is essentially illegal, right? Like they're selling it for research purposes only. So if you're using that for yourself, it's not regulated. You don't actually know. I mean, there are now some sites and platforms that are coming out that are doing third party testing on some of the major manufacturers. I think that's getting better, but unless you have a practitioner guiding you through that stuff, and also unless you've done everything you need to do to get yourself to an 8 out of 10, I just think there's a lot more important things that you can focus on.
Yeah, like sleep hygiene and things like that are just so basic and
Yeah,
I
sleep's
think
sleep's a hell of a drug.
overlooked or under focused on.
100%. Sleep's right up there. It's got to be in your top 3 or 4, right? Like, and just people just don't realize, like, they've measured the impact of sleep on hormones, health, cardiovascular health, all cause mortality, all sorts of stuff, right? Like we can show unequivocally the impact of good quality and quantity sleep, which is, by the way, much more impactful than something like a peptide that advertises that it can improve sleep or whatever. So, but those are boring and they're unsexy. Those
And you
things
can't sell them for
can't tell.
$150 a bottle.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I've gotten really into kind of sleep optimization. I'm really close to buying the 8 Sleep mattress. I've heard really good things about it. There's something in the back of my head saying, do I want to be sleeping in a Wi-Fi signal though? Like bathing in the Wi-Fi signal from the mattress? I don't know what I haven't dug deep enough to know if that's actually an issue or a thing, or maybe you can turn it off or put like a Faraday sheet or something on it, but that's the only thing that I haven't done to optimize sleep yet.
So a mattress that is on the Wi-Fi network?
Yeah, it's called the
That's
8 Sleep
crazy.
mattress. Yeah, I think you can unplug it because it has all these diagnostics built into it, and it kind of changes with your body temperature at night and keeps it at a perfect temperature for you individually, which is like a great concept. But I believe it operates via Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, which I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's not great. That's not great.
Maybe
So
not long term.
if you can put it on airplane mode, which is
Right,
kind of
right.
ironic, you'd never put it, you'd never take your mattress on an airplane, but like
Yeah.
the Aura Ring, I'm wearing mine right now. You can have it in airplane mode, and then it's not using Bluetooth to stay connected to your phone all day long. I mean, you don't get notifications if you've been sitting too long, but you also don't get doused with radiation all day long.
Right. So you could just upload the data once a day or whatever it is. Yeah, I use the Whoop. Um, I kind of do the same thing sometimes too. But yeah, it's good to kind of we talked about diagnostics, right? Like not sure how accurate it is, but as long as it's inaccurate by the same amount all the time, right? Like I can use that to track trends and changes over time, and I can play around with stuff and kind of loosely associate, okay, I did that thing and that created that sort of impact. Like what gets measured gets managed. That's valuable data.
Yeah. So, what are you paying attention to as far as the metrics on your Whoop, and what sort of actions are you taking to make improvements to those numbers?
Well, everything on the Whoop is built around HRV. So I'm constantly trying to improve that metric. But
Now, a lot of our listeners will be familiar with HRV, but for someone who's not, why don't you explain it?
yeah, so heart rate variability, they found that to be a great predictor of overall health. It's essentially kind of measuring the resilience of your heart, right? Like how quickly you can go from parasympathetic to sympathetic and back and forth. That's essentially kind of a fairly good way to measure kind of overall health and longevity. Um,
Yeah.
so,
So, if
but
you don't have much variability, then you,
that's not as good.
if it's really bad, then you're near death, basically.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Which it means that you're just not, you're not able to, your body's not able to respond in the way that it needs to keep yourself safe and functioning properly. So the more variability, the better, so that you can kind of push yourself and adapt and respond and recover properly and all that kind of stuff. So I tend to focus most for myself on the step count because I just recognize that if I'm not getting more than 10,000 steps, then it means that I've been too sedentary. I don't follow it religiously. I don't believe that it has to be a certain step count necessarily, but I just find that for myself, like that's when I feel better. So I try to make sure, that I have that step count over 10,000, and then the calories, I don't know how accurate it is, but I've found that when I'm at a certain, I found the best way for me to diet or stay lean is instead of focusing on consuming less food, I focus on burning more energy, right? And so like if it's all, like almost kind of like a reverse dieting principle, right? So like I can kind of I have a lot more leeway if I'm making sure I'm hitting a certain calories burned each day. I found that that's where my body comp seems to be the best. So that's where I use it the most. And then obviously sleep. I look at how many hours of sleep, what the sleep quality is. I try to keep that in the green always.
Right. And so, what are some of your best sleep hacks to get improvements in, let's say, deep sleep and REM sleep and just total overall sleep?
Colder room, that I had to get used to. I used to tend to like sleeping in a little bit of a warmer temp. So I had to really, really train myself for that. And even some of the nights where like I felt like I was cold all night, I ended up having better sleep quality. So you just kind of got to get used to it a little bit. Total darkness was another big one. Most people have a little bit of light that's coming in, whether it's from an LED on a clock or air conditioner or something like that, or just the windows. So blackout curtains. And if I'm in a setting where that's not an option, I sleep with an eye mask.
Do you have a favorite for eye mask?
I can't remember the name of it, but it's a padded one that has kind of cutouts
Yeah,
for the
Manta.
eyes. Is it Manta? That sounds right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mantasleep.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
have
a
that.
it's a nicer one for sure. Yeah, I feel like if that you're talking about comfort and something that you're gonna be using consistently, and yeah, so that's a big one. Getting sunlight in your face and eyes right when you wake up. Like my part of my routine is just no matter what, no matter how tired I am, I try to wake up at the same time to kind of set that circadian rhythm. No matter how late I've gone to bed or whatever it is, and I roll out of bed before I can think about it. I'm out the door, and I typically just walk to the gym that's down the road. And if it's a day that I'm lifting, I'll lift. But even if it's not a day that I'm going to lift, I'll just go to the gym and maybe I'll just stretch a little bit or ride the bike or just do something that kind of gets me out of the house. And so my brain can kind of slowly turn on. And then
Yeah. What time do you get up?
I get up at 6. I've
Okay.
tried a lot of different things. I've done 5, I've done 4, I've done 7, 8, right? Like different phases of my life, different times have served me better. For right
Hmm.
now, what I do requires a lot of brain power and a lot of creative juices and a lot of motivation. And I've found that if I have low energy, um, regardless of whether I was able to get up and win the day by being up ultra early and get my routine before the sun comes up or whatever it is. If I have low energy, then I'm not optimized in terms of my.
Yeah, you won't be working in the flow state.
I won't be working in a flow state, and life happens, right? And I don't want to say, oh, I'm not going to go out to dinner with my girlfriend because I can't stay up past 10 p.m. on a weeknight, right? Like every once in a while, I want to have the liberty to do that. And if that just doesn't fit, then I'm going to, if I don't do that, then I'm going to be absolutely miserable the next day. And so it's a good kind of compromise. I found 6, but the key is locking that in. I actually I did a sleep study years ago, and that was the one thing that the doctor told me, the sleep specialist told me, was that the most important thing is anchoring your wake up time, and that's also a good hack. It's also a good hack. The anchoring your wake up time is also a good hack for somebody that's insomniac, or like has trouble falling asleep and things like that. If you just make sure you get up and get out of bed at the exact same time, eventually you'll get more and more tired when it is time to go to sleep, and your body will get used to it pretty quick.
So a sleep study, that's isn't that primarily for folks who have what is it when sleep apnea when you stop breathing in the middle of the night and you just kind of gasp for air and get freaked out in the middle of the night.
Yeah, they put like a little kind of chest monitor and a little thing that went into my nostrils to kind of measure oxygen flow. Yeah, because I just wanted to know if that was a factor, if that was something that I was working against. It is something that a lot of people do have, but I didn't. but I wanted to know.
Right. Cool. And did they find like mild or any level of sleep apnea? Because snoring is something that a lot of people don't take seriously enough, and that's a signal of or a indicator of sleep apnea. And sleep apnea is not good for your health.
Not good. Yeah, incredibly not good. I mean, essentially, you're not breathing for certain periods of time. Like it's that you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain. No, I didn't. I a long time ago I got into mouth taping, so I've done that, and so I keep my mouth shut. And I used to snore like when I was really tired or when I had been drinking or something like that. I would just be mouth wide open, sawing lumber. But I really don't anymore. And I'm almost always put like a little strip of. I don't buy the expensive like uh, mouth block, like whatever the brands of them. I just have a little bit of sterile surgical tape that I put right here, and it just helps kind of keep my mouth closed, so I'm not mouth breathing for half the day, which is the night.
Yeah. Cool. So let's go back to the BMI, body mass index, and body fat percentage, and how to optimize that. If the typical American is obese, that's what, 70% of the time or something like that. A crazy stat I heard recently.
An even
How,
crazier one is 82% of Americans are considered metabolically unhealthy.
wow,
Yeah,
that's atrocious.
it's really bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
So what are the out of healthy range BMI and body fat percentage scores that we should be aware of, and then start taking some action to reduce?
I'm not actually sure what the threshold is for BMI. I think it changes a lot depending on your sex and your age, and your height and your weight, right? Like I think the best thing to do though is there's either getting a DEXA scan, which is kind of the gold standard, or an in body at least, which is kind of it just measures the I think it's an electric pulse that pushes through your body and just measures that the impedance. So it tells you kind of lean mass versus body fat and things like that. So I think those are good tests or diagnostics to get done. And if you're doing that, you're doing it under supervision of somebody that can then say, okay, based on your personal biometrics, your demographics, all that kind of thing, this is the best range for you to be in.
How often do you get a DEXA scan? And I know there's what is the one, the body fit one? I forget what it's called exactly.
Yeah, the in body,
In body,
in
yeah. How
body.
often do you get that, or would you recommend? And of course, this is not medical advice. Consult your doctor. All disclaimers apply. Um, yeah. So in body, how often do you do it? And DEXA scans, how often?
The DEXA maybe once every 5 years, an in body maybe once a year.
Yeah, you don't want to do DEXA scans too often, right?
Yeah, you don't necessarily need to. I mean, you can do it more often if you're actively working on that, right? And you can use it as a pretty accurate way to measure your progress if you're actively working on it. For me,
Hmm.
body comp isn't a focus, just because I'm super active and kind of have all the other components of health dialed in around my hormones and diet and exercise and all that kind of stuff. Um, but if it was an issue or something that I wanted to address, I would do it a little bit more often.
Yeah, got it. Got it. Okay. And by the way, I was curious while we were talking what the name of that tape was. I bought it before, the rectangular one where there's
Yeah, what's that called?
a hole in the middle of it, kind of like
Yeah,
a
hostage tape,
rectangular donut.
hostage
What's
tape,
that?
hostage tape.
Hostage tape.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the Mayo tape is the one I was thinking of. I just couldn't
Okay.
remember the name of it, and then I Googled it. Yeah, and you said you still do that. You've been doing that for
Yeah.
how long?
A long time. I don't know, 5, 10 years.
Wow. Okay. And did you see improvements in different metrics like HRV or deep sleep or anything like that by doing the mouth taping?
It's hard because I didn't have a Whoop or anything that I used to track it back when I started. But I've had periods of time where I haven't done it for a little while, and I'll just kind of fall out of the habit for a little bit. And then when I start, I tend to see little blips of improvement. It's hard to really say, but I think the science is there enough to show that mouth breathing um, is unhealthy for various reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you read James Nestor's book?
The
Was it
oxygen
Breathe or
advantage.
Breath?
Yeah, there's the oxygen advantage. I
Oh,
forget
he has a new book. Yeah. Okay.
I forget if that's Nestor. There's breathe, and then there's the oxygen advantage. Yeah, yeah. I've thumbed through both of them, but yeah, what I've also done that I have seen a change from is keeping my mouth closed when I'm walking. Like I'll try to walk and measure it with my whoops to make sure I stay up in like the zone 2 or zone 3 when I'm walking, like a really brisk walk. But then as soon as you start to get a little bit out of breath, you tend to breathe out of your mouth. And so I've tried to do things like they talk about in the oxygen advantage, where you actually hold your breath a little bit while you're out of breath to kind of train your cardiovascular system, and that does make a difference.
Cool. Now, are you familiar with the Live O2 device?
I'm not. No, what's that one?
So this it's kind of a oxygen deprivation and then hyperoxygenation protocol with you put on a mask, a face mask with that's connected to oxygen, and then you actually get it, you lower the oxygen level, increase the nitrogen level, and you're riding on a stationary bike or doing some other kind of exercise like that while you are doing this, breathing in lower oxygen level air, and then at the end they turn up the hyperoxygenation, so you get flooded with a lot more oxygen, and it hyperoxygenates. So cells that don't typically get a lot of oxygen in your body will end up getting hyperoxygenated. Now I'm probably butchering the explanation here because I'm not trained on LiveO2, but I did interview one of the executives at LiveO2 back in I think 2016, 17. I saw their and tried their technology at a biohacking conference, Dave Asprey conference. Yeah, probably almost a decade ago, and I liked it. I thought, wow, this is cool. I should have them on my podcast, and I think it's worth experimenting with. I actually had the executive bring the salesperson who was manning the booth there because I had a conversation with her, and I was just really impressed with her and wowed by her story. She had a very terrible car accident, and she was in a lot of pain, and her body was just not functioning, and she tried pretty much everything. She tried all sorts of protocols, all sorts of tech. And then one of her last ditch efforts was Live O2, and it turned her life around. It was such a godsend for her. And so she ended up applying to get a job. When she was able to finally work again, she's like, well, this changed my life. It saved my life. I might as well go work for them if they'll take me. And so she was the one hooking me up with the device and stuff at the booth, and was sharing her story when I was talking to her. It's pretty impressive. So yeah, I might want to check that out.
Yeah, I'd love to check that out. I think I've heard of and seen some things similar to that. I mean, I think it's awesome. It speaks to that kind of minimum effective dose principle, right? Like if you're limited in what you can do or what time you have, or you're limited in your mobility for one reason or another because you have an injury or something like that, like those things can be super valuable. Or they can kind of, again, like if you're at an 8 out of 10, you know, and you're maybe like a triathlete that's really trying to push the envelope and you want to squeeze that extra couple of miles out of yourself, you know, I think those things can be really, really cool. I have kind of a low, it's, this is a, I think I saw it on social media or something like that, but it's a low tech version of oxygen deprivation. It's like a mouth guard. You put it in your mouth and it restricts your breathing. So, and then you can kind of turn the dial to restrict your breathing more or less. So every once in a while, like almost kind of like a little fidget spinner, like when I'm doing some busy work or something, I'll just play around with it, put it in my in my mouth. I don't know. Maybe it makes a difference. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I can go. Maybe I can run fast when I'm playing basketball for another 5 minutes on the weekends.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It's episode 81. Tom Butler was the episode about LiveO2. Yeah. So, and by the way, I looked up the oxygen advantage. It wasn't James Nestor. It was Patrick McCone.
That's right, Patrick McCon. Yeah. So James Nestor is breathe. Patrick McKeon or McCon.
McKeon? Okay, that's how you pronounce it. Okay.
Yeah. One of
Yeah.
those.
Oh, all the stuff we'll put in the show notes for the episode, so you don't have to write any of it down. You can go to the show notes and click and buy the books and buy the test kit from Vitality RX, and the discount code will be there, all that sort of good stuff. So um, let's just share a few more kind of rapid fire lightning round type tips and hacks, biohacks, and performance optimizers. Let's start with some of your favorite books and courses and masterminds.
Um, my favorite book is Atomic Habits. Um, because just when there's a lot of things going on and a lot of chaos around you, like the one thing that you can control, um, you know, you got to focus on the things that you can control, right? And like, and it just provides a really great framework for building habits and stacking them and anchoring them and all that good stuff. That was really, really valuable to me. The Way of the Superior Man was also an awesome one, kind of just on
Yeah,
a
David Data.
David Data, just on a more personal level. I think that's a book that every man and every woman should read to just kind of get a better understanding and sense of masculine and feminine. Um, that's books. Masterminds. I don't know. It's been a really long time since I've done a
Yeah.
mastermind.
Yeah, well, that's how we met. We
Yeah.
met at
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like the
through Neil
in-person
Strauss
mastermind stuff. Yeah.
and his secret society that wasn't
Yeah.
so secret.
Is
It had
that
a
what
website.
that's what it was called, right? The Secret Society or something.
It was called the Society.
The
Yeah.
Society. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that actually was super impactful for me. It came at a time where I was doing a lot of soul searching and needed to do a lot of work on myself to grow up in a lot of different ways. And
Yeah,
doing
me
that,
too.
yeah, doing that in a group of your peers, kind of in a group of other men that where it's if you know it feels kind of safer and you can relate to each other. And the best thing about that I think was, and it's something that doesn't exist as much anymore. COVID kind of changed a lot of things and just kind of where we're going as a society, the experiential nature of it, right? Because like especially as like intellectual like creatures, we overthink the hell out of stuff, and we always default to our default mode network and our stories and you know that are informed by our traumas and all that kind of stuff. But if you can kind of get outside of that a little bit and you know do some sort of exercise or activity or something like that, and you don't think about it for a little while, and then you can explore how you showed up in that activity or exercise afterwards without realizing that that's how you showed up, you know, internally and externally. That kind of thing is super valuable, and I encourage all men to seek that out. At the very least, the community and connection component of it.
Hmm.
That's
Any
the
particular
That's the thing they say about
programs.
centenarians, right? Is like the biggest component is the community component of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So, any particular programs that you've done, like more individualized for improving your own uh, discipline and so forth, like 75 hard, or did you do Tough Mudder or anything like that?
No, no, I don't have the time uh, to do a lot of that kind of stuff, and my weekends have become pretty sacred, just because there's so much going on and so much work to do during the week, and I even have a little bit of work on the weekends as well. What my activity of choice has become is playing basketball. I've been playing pickup basketball with the same group of 15 or so guys for almost 10 years now, and we play Saturday morning super early. It's like 7 to 9 a.m. Get up, get your ass out of bed, get a sweat. You're playing hoops with guys that are all in their kind of 30s and 40s. So it's not crazy intense, and we're all kind of taking care of each other a little bit as far as injuries and things like that. But that gives me something to look forward to. It gives me something that taps into that like competitive nature where I have that I can kind of feed that a little bit. Some gives you some small wins here and there, and reinforces kind of the camaraderie and the community part of it. And so I find myself that's valuable in and of itself, but I also find myself kind of training for that, which gives me a little bit of a purpose, which is good too.
Yeah, that's cool. What's the best thing you've learned from those years that you were in the NFL?
Emotional regulation, I think I would say. I mean, I think, yeah, you could talk about kind of being a part of a team and an organization, a winning team and organization, and seeing that firsthand. But I think personally, developmentally, there's so much that can happen, and it's just such a game of inches, right? And you have to be so locked in for so long. Um, you have to be able to regulate how you're responding to the good things that happen and the bad things that happen. On a smaller level and more specific level, and then even on a broader level, right? Like even one play to the next, right? Like there's that, but then you zoom out, and it's like you get cut by one team that could create another opportunity somewhere else. So, but if you let yourself get all bent out of shape about it and you're not able to kind of keep yourself balanced, like I think I even mentioned it earlier in this conversation, but no high highs and no low lows. um, you can't, just not to get caught up on that roller coaster too much, which I think subconsciously has served me really well throughout my life
Yeah,
and
so
business.
anger management is part of that, emotional regulation. And part of it is also seeing that everything has a silver lining, everything is ultimately for the good, even though it might look like a total stab or um, bad time at the time. It's actually ultimately for the good. If you can get into a place of gratitude for it, then you're going to end up bringing in a more powerful resolution more quickly.
Exactly. Yeah. And then from a physical perspective, even, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, but so you tell me, when you're low energy, right? When you're tired, does that show up for you as being a little bit more temperamental, a little bit less patient, a little bit less kind, a little bit less emotionally regulated, all those kind of things? It does, right? So if that's the case, then energy is the key to a lot of problems that come up in our life with our partners or in business or with our kids or any of those kind of things. um, so all this stuff is really relevant, right? Like it's not just for the biohackers, or, oh, I'm not listening to that because I'm not into all that stuff, right? But if you think about it, it all comes back around and it's all interrelated. And I think that's a good way to put a label on the value of paying attention to this kind of stuff. If not for anything else, right? Do it for energy so that you have the energy to show up better across all those things.
Yeah, and I learned this quote from, I don't know if it's his, but from Tony Robbins, and it's where attention goes, energy flows.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So powerful. It's true.
One little secret hack that I don't hear people talking about, but it works incredibly well for me to get more energy is to pray for it. Like, and if I want to get into a flow state, instead of using Stephen Kotler's 23 flow state triggers, I just pray for it.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
how does that look? Give me an example.
It's very simple,
You
and
just
I'll give you a very tangible example, measurable example here.
wow.
And I didn't like
Yeah.
take a drink of like
Juice
any
or yeah, like
juice or
yeah,
anything, nothing.
yeah. Wow.
I just prayed and slept, and took care, like uh, whatever, magic happened inside my body. God handled it for me. So that's a cool example. Another
Yeah,
one
that's great.
is this was actually, I was driving back from the biohacking conference. It was in Orlando, and I was driving to Miami, and my wife and son and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were all in the car. Everybody's asleep except for me. I'm driving. So I can't listen to music. I can't listen to podcasts. So I start talking to God in my head. And I'd done at that point earlier in the year, I think, or maybe it was the previous year, I had done um Dave Asprey's 40 Years of Zen program, that week-long neuro feedback. It was really awesome. I got some memories, positive memories from my childhood that I didn't remember since my childhood. That was really cool. And I didn't have an easy childhood, so that was a nice, gift to be able to get those memories from the positive memories from my childhood. Well, I just spontaneously in this conversation with God decide I want to ask for more memories, and I don't want to spend the kind of like it's
Yeah, I
expensive
don't
to
want to
do
do
40
all
years of Zen.
that.
I don't want to do a week-long program and spend that kind of money again. Can I just get some? And I got flooded with 10 times the memories that came from the week-long program
Whoa.
in Seattle. And it all just, while I was driving, they just all flooded into me. Amazing.
Wow. Yeah, that
So
gives
the
you
power of prayer
yeah.
is the best biohack and performance hack there is.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever you want to call it, right? And to whatever God you believe in, whatever higher power, right? And
Yeah,
even if
like
it's
it's yeah. You can call it whatever you want, but it's
right,
the all that is the
divine.
thing that it
Mhm.
connects all of us. And when you make a request, and if you come with intentionality and humility and desire, wow, you can bend reality with that assistance, that divine assistance.
I believe it, and I believe that even the act of locking in and being fully present in that moment is super powerful as well, right? Like if that's what you're thinking about and that's what you're focusing on, then your brain's not able to be ruminating on, what you're worried about or your past or any of that other kind of thing. It like really, really anchors you in the present, which
Yeah,
and that
that's
that
actually
brings up
all you
another.
got is the present,
Yeah, that's
right?
it, right? Yeah, yeah, and that brings up another often overlooked component of health that I think is really really important is stress management, right? Like whether that's meditation or some kind of a stillness practice or breath work. I tend to breath work. I found, unless I'm really careful, tends to upregulate my nervous system a little bit too much. Unless I'm doing something like the 4-8-7 breathing or the box breathing um, techniques, but meditation really makes a huge difference for me. And then even just, and even scientifically, right? Like cortisol steals from your testosterone. So if you have chronically high cortisol, it's going to cause all sorts of downstream issues. So yeah, 15 minutes of meditation a day might be more powerful than taking a drug or a supplement, or something like that.
Yeah,
Like,
you might get off some prescription meds by doing this, right?
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just never know. Yeah, I think that's something, it's free, right? Like, why not throw that in there? We know that it makes a difference. And, it's impossible to expect of people, hey, just have less stress in your life, right? Like, that's not happening for most people, right? So it's not about reducing stress. It's about managing stress.
I mean, we live in such a chaotic time of great upheaval and change. We've not seen more change happen more quickly in any other time in human history. And, so buckle up.
Right. It ain't, yeah, nobody's coming to save you and it ain't getting better. It's only getting worse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have positive expectancy that everything is happening for the good ultimately, but it is a wild, bumpy ride to get to that yeah, that time. But the idea of being in control of your own breath and your own kind of nervous response is so critical. You just again, what gets measured gets managed. If you're not tracking this stuff and realizing that your cortisol levels are jacked up, or adrenaline, your stress levels with the apps like Aura and the Whoop and et cetera are if they're indicating you're in a stressed state, you need to address it.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I can tell. I mean, there's a thing in the Whoop app. I don't, is it in Aura also where it measures stress while you're sleeping? There's a low, medium, and high range of stress. And I can,
It does during the day too. Yeah, it measures your
during the
stress
yeah
levels.
I haven't looked at the daytime ones, but oh yeah, I have, but the daytime one on the Whoop is a little bit harder to kind of look at, quantify, because it's kind of like this graph that has up and down. With the sleep one, it tells you how long you were in low stress, how long you were in medium stress, how long you were in high stress. And typically most nights it's all low stress, but there's definitely nights where I'm ruminating on something, or maybe I have a little bit of a cold, or something's going on, and it'll be an hour in the medium stress zone,
Yeah.
2 hours.
Don't eat right before you go to bed.
That's
That's a
another one.
surefire way to screw up your sleep.
That's another great hack. Yeah, it definitely seems like the earlier I eat, that gets a little tricky for me, because if I try to go too early, and I'm starving right as I'm trying to fall asleep, then I can't fall asleep, and then it completely backfires, because then I got to eat like right at bedtime. But yeah, that's another good thing to play around with. Try to stretch that as far as you can. I also saw a sleep specialist talk about a warm bath or warm shower, um, because it essentially cools your core body temperature down. After it heats up, your body then works to cool it down. But the caveat was that it's most effective when it's at least 2 hours before bed. So if you try to do it too close to your bedtime, like a lot of people just take a shower and then get into bed, it can actually work against you a little bit, because it gets harder to get into your REM sleep cycle.
Mm, gotcha. Well, this is so good. And I know we're over time here, so we'll have to wrap, but again, if you could share your website and the discount code for the test kit, and then any like social platforms you want to drive people to follow you and learn from you, that would be great.
Yeah, vitalityrx.com. You just click get started. GYO20 will be the coupon code for your audience. As far as socials, we're at VitalityRx on Instagram. It's at Chas Vitality on TikTok. Chas VitalityRx on TikTok. That's been a pretty good platform, pretty fun platform for me. I'm growing pretty quick on, but I like to try to take pretty complex topics around hormone health and men's health and put it into terms that everybody can understand and have a little bit of fun with it. Use some fun kind of metaphors and comparisons, and try not to just be boring old Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I remember him.
Yeah, not that he wasn't awesome, but
yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chas. This is great, and congrats on your business that Vitality RX that you built from the ground up, and all the people you're helping and improving their lives. So
thank
you're
you.
you're a light in the world. Thank
really
you, Chas.
Appreciate it. You too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It was great. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And thank you, listener. You too are a light in the world. Go out there and make it a great week and do something unexpected and amazing for a loved one. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off. If you want to hear more conversations like this on hormones and high performance, then I recommend episode 10 with Chas Gessner, episode 72 with John Gray, episode 486 with Dr. Amy Horneman, and episode 512 with Dr. Molly Maloof. Also, I invite you to check out the show notes, transcript, action-based checklist, and all the URLs mentioned in this interview with Chas Gessner at getyourselfoptimized.com/540. If you enjoyed the conversation, I encourage you to share this episode and, more importantly, the entire show, Get Yourself Optimized, with a friend. Change your life and help me spread the light. Thank you.